Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Rudd. I'm one of the members of the board of the Canadian RegTech Association. Really like to welcome you today to our first virtual vendor showcase. Before we get started, just a little bit about the CRTA. As many of you may know, we aim to foster innovation in Canadian RegTech, and we do that in a number of ways, including thought-leading content and events. All of these things are on our website for you to check out. For example, this is the first of what we're planning as a quarterly series of vendor showcases. The next showcase will be on the topic of regulatory change management. We also have a webinar coming up on Tuesday, February 9th, and that's called Exploring Cyber Innovation. And we offer a regular podcast series. The latest two are on building an asset-specific data practice, and more recently, SupTech and RegTech innovation in Canadian securities regulation. And finally, we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on social media, etc. Even better, if you'd like to join as a member of the CRTA, we'd be happy to talk to you, so just reach out to us. So let's get started with today's event, client-focused reforms. I think enough has been said about those in the past. I won't dwell on the specifics, but suffice to say they've been a long time coming, and now they're just around the corner. The changes with respect to conflicts of interest are effective in June, and all of the other new rules are effective at the end of the year. And as we know, these new rules present many new challenges and pose a lot of questions for a lot of dealers and other regulated entities. But one thing I think is clear, and that's that technology will be at least helpful for some to comply and in fact critical for others to comply. So today we have 5 RegTech vendors. Each of them is a member of the CRTA, and they'll present videos highlighting their products and services. After each video, we'll have a 5-minute Q&A, which I will facilitate. So if you have questions, please feel free to post them on the Q&A facility on this webinar, and we'll do our best to get to them. And finally, we'd be very happy to connect those of you that would like to with any of the RegTech vendors that are presenting today. So reach out to us if you'd like to get in touch. It's our mission for sure to connect the members of our community and as we said earlier, to foster innovation. So without further ado, let's start with our first video from Four Eyes Financial.
Hi, I'm Lori Weir. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Four Eyes Financial, a Canadian regulatory technology company serving the wealth management industry. Four Eyes exists to help investors feel more confident that they're invested in products that meet their risk tolerance and financial goals. We achieve this through our digital services platform, which is built to change. We know that investors and regulators are going to have ever-changing demands, and we've built a platform to help firms meet those demands with simplicity and ease. Today, we're going to show you a 10-minute video around the CFRs with Sean Shore, who's a legal and compliance professional and an advisor to Four Eyes. He'll speak specifically to the CFRs, while our co-founder and CTO, Kendall McMiniman, is going to actually show you specifically how our solution will help you meet and address the CFRs. This is not a comprehensive review, but enough to generate questions which we look forward to answering. Now, over to Sean.
IROC has released its version of the client-focused reforms. One of the objectives of these rules is to harmonize IROC's approach with that of the CSA. We'll recall that the CSA released its rules back in 2019. IROC's CFRs will seek to improve investor outcomes, align client interests better with that of their dealer member, and to highlight the terms of the relationship that a client has with its dealer member. The topics covered by the client-focused reforms include know your client, know your product, and suitability. The first topic covered by the client-focused reforms is something that we're all very familiar with, and that's knowing our clients. Knowing our client is going to start during the client onboarding process and is going to continue throughout the life cycle of the client-advisor relationship. It covers off areas that we're familiar with: personal circumstances, financial circumstances, investment objectives of the client, investment knowledge of the client, risk profile of the client, and others. The know your client information becomes relevant when we start discussing the obligation of the investment advisor and its dealer member to make suitable investment recommendations. This is discussed in the client-focused reforms in the suitability determination area, when prior to taking certain investment actions, investment advisors must consider certain information. That information includes the know your client information that they've gathered.
Thanks, Sean. Let's take a look at our digital services platform and how it helps dealer members keep track of KYC. As we dive in and take a look, you can see the information that's available from a client perspective to the dealer member and the advisor. You can see the client's name, their age, their investment knowledge, their employer, the occupation. I can see information relative to their income and net worth, their personal income, that of their spouse, their liquid assets, fixed assets and net worth. And as well, more importantly, I do get to see their investment objective together with their time horizon. Two key important pieces of information when it comes to knowing your client.
The second key area coming out of client-focused reforms is known as knowing your product or product due diligence. What the client-focused reforms do is split this into two separate requirements. One requirement applicable to investment dealers and the other applicable to investment advisors. Investment dealers have what's called the product due diligence requirement. Investment advisors have the know your product requirement. Each of these requirements are a little bit different, so the requirements that are on the firm relate to having, for example, a product review committee or a product due diligence committee, and other requirements such as training or other conditions upon which a product may be sold and approving the product. The requirements on the investment advisor relates to their understanding of what they're selling, all of which is important when we tie this into the obligation to conduct a suitability determination prior to any investment action being taken on behalf of the client.
As Sean talked about the dealer member's responsibility for knowing their product or product due diligence, we do have an offering within our platform that addresses that. So let's take a look at how we handle product due diligence. So as we dive into the digital services platform, we'll take a tour of the approved product list. Here on the screen, for example, you see the approved products. You can see their status, the name, the type it is, and a firm can easily add a new product to that list if they want. By selecting the add product, I can key in the name, the attributes, the asset class, the share class, the commissions or fees associated with it, and most importantly, liquidity and the day's notice required. They can add their due diligence documents as well as prospectus. This also rolls downstream to the advisors in the field who can have access to the due diligence documents when reviewing this for clients. As well as the approved product list, you can keep track in this product list module of the banned products. Advisors can have a window into cease trade orders, and you can also see a window into restricted products, and any documents or notes could be associated related to those restricted products are also made available to the advisor in the field. I can search the approved product list by just typing in its name or its trading symbol. I can sort by type, be it an OM, a PAR, a pooled fund, a PPN, callable bonds. I have the options. So that's a bit of the approved product list and shows how firms can help manage their due diligence requirements from a head office perspective, but also make that information available to clients downstream.
The last topic of discussion regarding client-focused reforms pertains to suitability determinations. So prior to taking a particular investment action, which includes, for example, buying or selling a security or a product, the investment advisor must meet certain criteria. One, it's suitable. Two, it puts the client's interest first. Suitability means it's got to be suitable based on the know your client information of the client, the investment advisor understanding and knowing his or her product, any concentration issues for that particular purchase or action, the costs, and that the advisor is considered a reasonable range of alternatives.
When the advisor logs into Risk 4, they go to the pre-trade analyzer, they'd add their client, and it'd be presented with a client portfolio. Here you can see the current portfolio and the target portfolio, the changes they wish to make to that account. The advisor has the ability to add holdings and remove holdings and see that impact instantly within the pre-trade analyzer. They can screen for those assets. They can screen the universe. They can look for equities, mutual funds, ETFs based on the classification, manufacturer, the risk rating, volatility, or they can do a peer comparison for looking for a range of alternatives. They can simply type in the mutual fund and present it all the members of that category that are relative to that mutual fund. Within that peer group, I can see the size, I can see the asset class, the category, and I can see the key metrics I'm comparing against for my range of alternatives, be it the MER, the max drawdown, the return, or the risk and volatility. The power of the pre-trade analyzer being built on our digital services platform allows a full integration of our compliance alerts together with the advisor tools. So here in this example, the advisors added and removed assets to the portfolio, and they're presented with the alerts that could be impacted by the choices they've made. So for example, there's a large trade activity or transfer. The advisor can see the parameter that was set or triggered, and there's also portfolio level suitability. So this is just one sample of how integrating a digital services platform from head office to the dealer members' compliance initiatives to the advisors in the field can power client-focused reforms going forward.
Everybody, take a deep breath. If we look at these rules and digest them one by one piece at a time, we're talking about topics that are very familiar to us. Knowing your client, knowing your product, suitability.
Okay, thanks very much, Four Eyes. I'd like to bring on Lori and Kendall, if you would join us for the Q&A.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi there. Just checking the Q&A panel in the webinar. Either you just answered all the audience's questions or they're very shy. I'll keep it open for now, but so folks, please give us your questions if you have any. I have a couple for you though. I guess, you know, a big picture question. What do you think is the biggest differentiator of the Four Eyes products?
I think what really separates us is that we are a digital services platform and we sit on top of a large amount of data. It's not siloed systems, for example. Our workflows are connected, given our different modules, and all that data feeds the same back end. So an advisor puts a note downstream, be it the client suitability determination requirements and notes around that. It's also made available to the supervisory team and trade surveillance when they go doing the review of that client portfolio as well.
Right. Thank you. Anything to add, Lori?
I'd add that, you know, we also enable reasonable range of alternative actions, which is really an important part of course, the CFRs, and having that available, that module on top of compliance platform enables a number of things that improve the advisor experience, which I think is a really important part of the discussion about enacting the CFRs. You really have to make sure that advisors are experiencing this in a way that matches their workflow and enables them to provide good experience to their clients.
Great, thanks. We do have a couple questions. One of them I think you may have just answered if you want to add more to it, and that's how does your solution fit with advisor workflow?
From the workflow perspective, the advisor, if you're looking at the reasonable range of alternatives, for example, because part of our platform is also securities master, that advisor can do searching and screening within our platform. They can save any of the work that they've done from a due diligence perspective, archive that product as a favorite, and then later on when they go through the point of sale process, they can actually pull that favor out, already show their due diligence has been done, and then add the appropriate notes for the requirements of the sale.
Great. We have another question. I'll read it out. For KYC, what tools do you have in regards to gathering details or to validate change from year to year without having to update a full account document?
We've got two areas we do that. We have within our platform, we have onboarding, so we'll gather that KYC data electronically. But if you're not using our onboarding solution, we have built some open APIs to go out and scrape your solution provider. We have a number of clients who are using DocuSign and other vendors for onboarding. And we are going out through those APIs and grabbing that KYC data from the documents that are being signed there, and then pulling it back in the platform. We expose that downstream to the advisors, but we also expose that upstream to the trade surveillance supervision team as well.
Okay. That's all the questions we have from the audience. I guess I just have one more, and that's how flexible is your platform to changing requirements? Because as we know, and I happen to know just as well as most people, rules tend to keep changing over time.
We've designed it such that the workflows really drive through the digital services platform. And because we have this open architecture that's API driven, as the regulations change, we're able to easily tweak those workflows to match those regulations going forward.
Yeah, and I would add to that again, I think it's, we know that the changes are coming, and, you know, even though there's often time to think about how you're going to run your business around the changes that are coming, you know, the more you can do to eliminate the conflict in the process for the advisors in the field, I think that's always a primary focus of the dealers and the clients that we work with. And so having a platform that's built to change is really critical to ensure that there isn't too much disruption in the delivery of service to the advisor and then straight through to their clients.
Terrific, great. Thanks, Lori and Kendall. I guess now we'll move on to our next video, which is presented by InvestorCom.
Seen an overall increase in wealth regulation, as well as a focus on best interest in the last few years. While implementations differ between jurisdictions, the themes are remarkably similar. When dealing with retail clients, wealth managers are expected to act in the best interest of those clients. One aspect of this expectation is know your product, or KYP. With client-focused reforms in Canada, both the investment dealer and the advisor have a heightened obligation for KYP. With tens of thousands of products available to the advisor, this becomes a daunting, and I would argue, impossible human task. Evaluating product alternatives from a diverse and growing product shelf, and then comparing those alternatives across a spectrum of cost, risk, and performance requires strong technology support. The record-keeping obligation exponentially increases this data management challenge and calls out for another layer of tech support. While technology will play an increasingly important role in compliance, I think the good news for the advisor and the dealer is that technology will never replace the true value delivered by the advisor. Building client relationships based on human understanding, empathy, and optimism.
The client-focused reforms are based on the fundamental principle that the client's interests must come first. The regulations codify a set of enhancements to the existing KYC, suitability, and relationship disclosure requirements. The CFRs also introduce a new Know Your Product or KYP provision for both investment dealers and advisors. For an investment dealer, the KYP expectations move beyond what was previously regulatory guidance to form stringent rules requiring dealers to increase their level of due diligence on the securities made available to their clients. Investment dealers must now take reasonable steps to ensure securities made available to clients have been assessed, approved, and monitored for significant change.
When we polled the wealth management industry during our CFR roundtable, we observed that nearly 70% of dealers were exploring how to best monitor significant changes and assess their product shelf. In light of these regulations, our research has shown that a dealer's product shelf is constantly changing. For example, in a typical week, there are over 192 new funds, 21 removed, and 2,000 product changes, which included 1,500 MER changes.
Every night, Shelf Monitor reviews industry data to find material changes to the products on your shelf. Keeping track of changes has never been easy. For example, ETF and mutual fund terminations and additions are communicated in an inconsistent format, from press releases to material change reports at unpredictable times. With Shelf Monitor, you can find all relevant additions and deletions in a single place. Shelf Monitor tracks all the changes at the fund series level, so you know exactly what was affected. The changes are presented in a consistent format and available on demand. When there are hundreds of risk rating changes in a single month, instead of looking out for news releases from fund companies, you need a tool to easily identify which products became riskier and which decreased in risk ratings. When there are thousands of product changes like MERs to sort through, Shelf Monitor helps you easily identify the funds with the biggest changes. Our goal really is to get you the right information when you need it. While Shelf Monitor reviews many data fields and data sources on a nightly basis, you decide which data points to turn on or off. Our proprietary materiality index then lets you sift through the noise and control which changes rise to the top. You can monitor changes on your shelf using Shelf Monitor's web interface. You can also get significant change alerts sent directly to your inbox. Demonstrating compliance with your significant change monitoring obligation is only a click away. So what do the new KYP provisions require advisors to do? And the best way to consider this new requirement is by contrasting regulatory expectations before and after the client focus reform. Before the client focus reforms, much of the reps' focus was centered on meeting the suitability requirements. And suitability is fundamentally a matching exercise that asks, is the KYC or the client's requirements, such as risk tolerance, time horizon, investment objectives, are they aligned with the investments or portfolio characteristics? The client focus reforms go beyond this matching exercise and ask the rep to understand the security she's recommending and the impact of the recommendation's fees on the client's portfolio, and consider a reasonable range of available alternatives. And in order to make a recommendation that is truly in the client's best interest. And let's not forget that under section 11.5 of CFR, the rep now needs to maintain records on how she met her KYP and suitability requirements.
To put this requirement into perspective, let's consider an example that assumes the advisor has approximately 35,000 investment funds available on a firm shelf and needs to make 5 investment recommendations. To make a compliant recommendation, the advisor needs to assess product characteristics. Let's assume this involves 6 data points: asset class, product type, fees, risk, performance, and share class. When we do the math, we can see that the advisor needs to process 1 million data points every single day. This clearly is not humanly possible and can only be solved with technology.
Given the principle-based nature of the client-focused reforms, there's a high degree of ambiguity around the practical application of the advisor's obligations. When we polled the wealth management industry, we observed that nearly 75% had a challenge with the advisor's KYP and assessment of reasonably available alternatives. For example, what is the most effective and compliant manner in which an advisor should meet her KYP obligations, assess a reasonable range of available alternatives, and demonstrate she has accounted for this when recommending investments in the client's best interest? An advisor can confidently meet this regulatory challenge by using InvestorComp's Peer Compare. Peer Compare creates a frictionless experience that empowers the advisor to go beyond the matching exercise and assess how a recommendation stacks up against a reasonable range of alternatives based on a configurable peer group and comparison dimensions. So how does an advisor use Peer Compare? Let's join our advisor just after she's determined that a real estate fund recommendation is aligned with the client's needs and circumstances. At this point, she can check off the requirement that her recommendation is aligned with the client's KYC document. Now she needs to assess how the key aspects of her recommendation, namely cost, risk, and return, stacks up against available alternatives. Instead of sifting through a myriad of regulatory documents or conducting a side-by-side comparison, Peer Compare generates a peer group, which is a subset of similar products available on her shelf. In our real estate fund example, if the advisor's recommended fund doesn't stack up well to its peers, she can change her selection to an alternative real estate fund that stacks up better among other suitable options. Peer Compare completes the advisor's workflow by integrating with the record-keeping engine. The advisor's recommendation, analysis of available alternatives, and accompanying advisor notes are tracked all centrally in our application. The solution also delivers and tracks all related disclosure documents to your investment. And all activities can be reported and tracked at the advisor, branch, or enterprise level?
Every firm has unique compliance challenges and is approaching the KYP and suitability dilemma slightly differently. So why do firms value InvestorCom solutions? We hear three common themes. Our solutions are very intuitive, which means strong adoption with financial advisors. We have a single platform for KYP, best interest analysis, and record keeping. And perhaps most importantly, ease of implementation and integration. Please contact us today for a conversation on how we can provide you with compliance payment.
Okay.
Thanks, Wendy.
Awesome. Thank you, David. This is David Reeve, the CEO of InvestorCom, and I apologize. I think we missed just the very beginning introduction of your video there. I think, do we also have Param Nasseri with us today?
Yep, I'm right here.
Param is the VP of Regulatory Strategy with InvestorCom. So we have one question so far. Again, folks, feel free. Question is, are you considering using any AI tools to predict change?
Let me jump in, David, and maybe you can address anything I've missed. Wendy, to answer this particular question, I think the objective is to kind of step back and look at what the regulatory requirements are, which are fundamentally scan the universe of the products that you have available on your shelf and manage or monitor those significant changes that occur on a periodic basis. So it's a tough enough task to go out there, scrape all these data resources and identify what is actually significant and help an investment dealer become aware of those tools. As far as predicting, using AI or to predict particular changes, we're not necessarily going that far because of the specifics of the regulatory requirements.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I hope that answered the audience's question there. A couple of other questions. You mentioned something about some surveys that you've done on how ready the industry is for the CFRs. Can you tell the audience maybe where they can find more information on that?
I'll take this one too. David, jump in at any point in time. So yeah, Wendy, we've hosted a number of wealth management roundtables and surveyed our audience and asked specific questions around their progress on the client focused reform specific project and captured very valuable insights. We have this, of course, on our website, and I'll share that in a quick second. We welcome you to contact us directly. We'd love to engage with you and talk to you about some of the insights that we've had. Mm-hmm. Specifically, you can find them on info.investorcom.com/CFR insights or info.investorcom.com/IROC insights. Speaking of those two particular insight documents. In addition to those documents, Wendy, we have an upcoming webinar on February 2nd. We already have over 250 registered guests, and the focus of the conversation is going to be the client-focused reforms and the KYP challenge. We hope to see you there.
Wow, awesome. No other questions from the audience, but I'm curious, how long do you think, would you estimate it takes to onboard a client with your platform?
I can jump in there if you'd like, Param. I think, I think it depends on the actual client implementation. Many of our clients have some fairly deep API integrations into our platform. And so that, that tends to be the longest chunk of any implementation. But frankly, to get either Shelf Monitor or Peer Compare up and running, we just set up one of the largest broker dealers in the US on a pilot in a week. All we really need is to get your product shelf and you're up and running. So it's, one of the things our clients see great value in is the ability to both implement very quickly, but ultimately have a path towards integrating where the value of that integration is the highest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, terrific. No more questions from the audience, but as I will continue to stress, if you want to get in touch with InvestorCom or anyone else, just let us know. With that, then, I think we'll move to our next video, which is by Portfolio Aid.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Portfolio Aid, I would like to thank the Canadian RegTech Association for the opportunity to showcase our technology and to present to you today how we are helping our clients leverage technology to tackle the pending client-focused reforms. My name is Sam Webster, President and CEO of Portfolio Aid, and joining me today are Amanda Hamill, our Chief Client Officer, and Lee Kubenko, our Chief Technology Officer. For background purposes, Portfolio Aid provides IROC and MFDA dealers with regulatory compliance software solutions and has done so for 20 years. Canada is the core regulatory jurisdiction that we build solutions for. So when new regs like CFR are introduced, we work closely with our clients and industry associations to determine where our technology and compliance expertise can help. Today we will be presenting Portfolio Aid's product enhancements to address 2 CFR mandates for Know Your Product that will land at the end of 2021. You will also hear from Vigilant CS, a strategic partner and complementary solution provider that can address other equally important areas of CFR. Okay, let's get started. Portfolio Aid offers enterprise software applications that we view as a hybrid of RegTech and WealthTech because it supports both compliance supervisors and advisory teams, all of whom have compliance responsibilities and are therefore compliance stakeholders. Like Tier 1 and Tier 2 trade surveillance, automated KYC suitability, issue tracking, audit reporting, etc., are included as part of Portfolio Aid's core RegTech platform, but Portfolio Aid also empowers the advisor by providing tools and insight so that they can proactively manage their compliance tasks. Today, we are focusing on 2 new CFR mandates to address KYP monitoring and KYP peer comparison that will affect both the dealer and the advisor. To set the stage, it's important to understand Portfolio Aid's current KYP managed services offering. Lee, I think it's fair to say that CFR will heighten the scrutiny for how dealers manage and monitor their product shelves. Can you explain how Portfolio Aid's clients use our KYP managed services today and how this will apply to CFR?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I agree. I think the CFR amendments are definitely going to change how dealers view and manage their product shelves. And I think dealers are going to need more tools at their disposal to keep on top of things. At Portfolio Aid, KYP has always been an important part of what we bring to the table. In fact, the roots of Portfolio Aid have been oriented around KYP, specifically around developing ratings algorithms to support risk management and compliance. Now, those algorithms have evolved over the years, and so has the scope of our KYP management services. In addition to distributing risk ratings to all compliance stakeholders, we also facilitate the tagging of securities with product type markers, such as tagging funds as hedge funds or ETFs as leveraged or inverse leveraged. We also provide interfaces that allow our clients to easily manage their approved product shelf. So providing KYP information has always been our mandate, and now with CFR on the horizon, we are going to expand that even further. Some additional markers that we'll be tracking are linking products with related issuers, categorizing products into sectors, and monitoring and capturing liquidity status. One thing to mention is that there probably isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all answer to CFR. And with that in mind, our KYP management solutions are, and will continue to be, flexible enough to support the needs of all of our clients. Back over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Lee. That's great. Appreciate the insight. So now that we have a good foundational understanding of how our clients manage KYP data more effectively with our solution, let's switch gears and focus on the new KYP-oriented solutions that we're introducing. They are in the areas of significant change monitoring and product peer comparison. And I'm going to ask Amanda to provide a brief synopsis of the CFR regulations we're addressing and how we're going to support registered dealers and buyers with these new obligations. Amanda?
Thanks, Sam. So for one of the things that is really important for us is to understand that for KYP, there is significant change monitoring is one of the requirements of CFR. There is a dealer obligation and an advisor obligation. For the dealer, it's important for them to understand, what is being changed, monitoring for those significant changes, and really being clear on, what movement's happening so that they can review and monitor. And for the advisor needs to understand for the securities that they hold or they're recommending, You know, what are the features? What are the benefits? What are the products and how do they compare to each other? Because the advisor needs to make that final recommendation to their clients. So we have built 2 solutions in order to try to meet these needs. So the first product I'm going to review is KYP Monitor. So both our KYP Monitor and our second product, KYP Compare, are solutions created for both the MFDA and IROC dealers. Based on the feedback from our clients and the review of the regulations, we will be covering the following asset classes: mutual funds, ETFs, equities, and fixed income. KYP Monitor allows dealers to monitor for significant KYP changes. Our solution comes with an extensive catalog of comprehensive data points in the area of structure, features, risk, cost, and performance. Our solution has been built where you can monitor daily or reviewing historical data by searching for a specific date range. In addition, you'll be able to drill down by a variety of data elements in order to monitor for the significant changes that you'd like to review. For clients that don't use Portfolio Aid 360, the entire application that we're showing you would still be available except for our open suitability column. Each dealer has the ability to configure what KYP data points they deem to be significant. In addition to the data that you would expect, Portfolio Aid is also providing some unique Portfolio Aid derived data elements as part of our KYP managed services offering. Lee, can you please shed some light on these?
For sure. Thanks, Amanda. I think this ties back to what I was saying earlier about KYP management. So in addition to some of the data points you would expect monitoring of for significant changes like MER or time horizon or fund manager, some examples, we'll also be monitoring some data points that are unique to Portfolio Aid. In addition to our proprietary risk and investment objective ratings, which are unique to Portfolio Aid, we'd also monitor for changes in the approval status, sector, or liquidity status of a product. And when it comes to performance, we don't want to just notify our clients every month when new performance numbers are available. Instead, we're going to rank these products into quartiles and then trigger on significant changes insofar as the products compared to their peers. And similarly, 52-week low was a good data point that we thought would be meaningful, but only if it's unique to that product within its market or industry. Amanda, back over to you.
All right, thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. So the KYP peer comparison requirement is more of an advisor responsibility. However, it is implied that the dealer has a role to ensure that this is happening. For KYP peer comparison, the advisor has the obligation to know what products are approved by the dealer and how they compare to other products of their peers. The dealers also need to have a mechanism to communicate what products are approved and to supervise that the advisor is meeting the requirements for the KYP peer comparison. So let's look at our second product, the KYP Compare. The approach that Portfolio Aid has taken for building our KYP Compare solution is by using a wizard-assisted design approach. With the advisor using the wizard, they have the ability to look up and compare products. The advisor then can add one or multiple products into the cart. Once the products are in the cart, the next step in the wizard will provide more comparison details so the advisor can then do their due diligence to determine which product they are going to recommend. The advisor then, for audit purposes, can add notes related to their recommendation. In addition, there will be email capability and audit reporting based on the activity of the advisor, which can go to head office. As Lee mentioned, each dealer will have the ability to take a product with an approved fund, which will assist the advisor and supervisor to know which products are approved. KYP Monitor can be used by Portfolio users or dealers that do not use our application. Back to you, Sam.
That's great, Amanda. Thank you. And thank you, Lee, for your participation in today's event. And one last thank you to the Canadian RegTech Association for providing us with the opportunity to showcase our solutions today.
Great, you're welcome, Sam. Let's have a chat with Sam Webster, the president of Portfolio Aid, and Lee Kavanko, the VP, or rather Chief Technology Officer.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Lee. Great. Well, I think you just answered all the audience's questions because they have none. But I'll ask you a couple as well. We've talked with the first couple of vendors about things like how their product is differentiated from the others, how flexible the product is, how long it takes to use the product. In this case, maybe not onboarding, and so would you like to speak to any of those? About your product overall?
Yeah, why don't I take a crack at that, and Lee can jump in as well. So, where we believe we can really assist our clients is the regs themselves deal with know your product data that, is not as simple to try and source and to manage effectively. It's a sort of a combination of what data is available in the back office system, or where you're getting the approved product shelf from, and the quality of your market data providers. So, that is, as Lee mentioned in the video, that is really kind of the roots of Portfolio Aid. We've been doing that for a long time. We've been working with third-party market data providers. When we talk about developing our own risk rating strategies, because we have a solution that not only supports kind of mutual funds and ETFs where the risk ratings are provided by the manufacturer, our clients who are, IROC dealers in nature, asked us for a solution to support, equities and fixed income as well. So, having access to market data, understanding, what may qualify as a significant change, or building a solution to provide peer comparisons, that's where we believe we can offer some value to our clients because of that experience.
Awesome, thanks, Sam. We do have a question from the audience. Is there both a dealer dashboard and advisor dashboard that would send an alarm or alert to a change in any characteristic of a security?
Yes. So the dashboard that we showed you, and they were just screenshots, but certainly anyone that would like to have a more in-depth demo we can provide. But that interface is available to both the dealer and the advisor. So they would be able to both access. The advisor will just be reviewing changes to their own book of business. And we also believe, based on feedback from our clients, that providing an association of where the changes occurred and what accounts they might be associated with, potentially could be of value to the advisor as well. So that information's available both in the application itself, and we also send out an email with the change capture activity, at both dealer level and advisor level.
Great. Okay. No more questions from the audience, so we will move on to our next video, which is by Vigilant CS.
Okay, thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking to you today. My name is Rob Kerwin. I am the CEO of Vigilant CS. We are an advisor compliance platform focused on the financial services industry. As it relates to client-focused reform, we are focused on phase 1 requirements, or we partner with Portfolio Aid to support phase 2. We have 2 solutions, VCS Open Plus, which is a centralized advisor compliance management platform, and VCS Pro, which is a management dashboard and advisor risk analytics tool. VCS Open Plus is your central hub for advisors and compliance to manage core non-transactional activities such as registration management, disclosure tracking, CE tracking, as well as other functionality listed below. Information captured through VCS Open Plus, plus third-party data, can be ingested into our VCS Pro solution, developing a central advisor compliance dashboard, summarizing core information and providing a risk score based on an individual's propensity to comply. This information can be, again, rolled up to the supervisor level location, and the corporate level, allowing you to take a risk-based approach to your program. As it relates to CFR, we cover off 6 core functions: conflict of interest assessments, we'll talk about that later; use of titles, the registration, corporate, and designation, whether you have it or when it remains in good standing; due diligence, initial and ongoing, including product committee, as well as referral arrangement activities; supervision, taking a risk-based approach where you can assess based on the individual score, DCF Pro score, to assess individual and whether they are acting in the best interest of clients. 5, document development. We have a collaborative platform which allows you to develop policies, regulatory and other disclosure documents, such as your conflict of interest policy and the RBI. Finally, the compliance management, whether it's training, communication, scheduling, or diarizing audits, and capturing audit information can again be captured through the tool. Let's look at a use case. Although our solution covers off corporate, vendor, as well as individual conflict of interest assessments, let's look at an advisor situation. John Smith is an advisor at ABC Wealth Management. He has a book of business of $150 million. He's been with the firm for 10 years. He just advised you that he's a director of a private real estate company. And finally, based on policy, the OBA requires approval by a CCO. Typical standard process that I've seen in the past is that John would be submitting an annual compliance attestation where he evidences that he does have an OBA. This information is submitted typically via email over to the registration department for review and question whether the registration officer may go back to John to confirm that whether it is an OBA or not. If it is an OBA, again, an email is sent out with an OBA questionnaire, which gathers information about the OBA. Clarification is obtained from John by the registration officer. And when the registration officer has sufficient information, a summary document is provided to the CCO, outlining the OBA and making a recommendation. Based on the information, the OBA would be submitted into the NRD system and would be logged in a conflict of interest log document. Based on the old standards, this process would probably be sufficient. The only problem is now we have a material conflict of interest potential here. There's a number of issues that may arise. Number one, the annual attestation could mean that this OBA has been in existence for over a year. 2, the only source of the data is really John through this process. 3, because you can't take a risk-based approach, ultimately you're examining and having to provide the same amount of due diligence for each of the OBAs you receive. And 4, due to the lack of a structured data set, the file contains information in Word, email, PDF, Excel, as well as NRD information, making it harder to access the file, harder to search it, and harder to use it in terms of your risk assessment of individual advisors. Let's take a different approach. Using the VCS Pro platform, the advisor can actually look at their regulatory filings up to now, including their OBA, to confirm whether it has been submitted or not at any point in time. 2, the advisor can educate themselves in terms of what the OBA requirements are. 3, they can actually start to complete the form, which is aligned with the NRD filing. When completed, the information can flow over to the registration officer. The registration officer can collaborate with the advisors, such as John, in terms of completion of the form using the collaborative workbench. On top of that, the registration officer can look at the VCS Pro risk ranking of John to see if further due diligence would be required. And the registration officer can look at the regulatory file, personal training activity, complaints, incidents, conflicts, and audits that John has or been involved in. This allows the registration officer to make an informed decision in terms of future action and what recommendations he or she is making to the CCO. Based on the information captured, the CCO has determined that John is actually a high-risk individual and further examination would be warranted. On review, the compliance department has determined that John actually, rather than just simply being a outside business activity, it looks like it potentially is the promotion of that real estate property. Two, it looks like an off-book transaction that he's selling to advisors and ABC clients. This obviously changes the complexion of the matter, requiring a multidisciplinary team to be engaged in the process, such as HR, sales, risk, and legal, through our collaborative workbench. Through this process, there's a sign-off process, the ability to introduce control, as well as supporting the filing into the NRD system. Ultimately, this allows you to have a complete compliance record for future. It's a searchable, and the information captured through the system can be fed into a risk scoring for that individual. So why do you care? Well, ultimately, this whole process associated with client-focused reform really comes down to increasing the standard of care where there's a material conflict of interest. The parent in this situation that it is a material conflict of interest, which the regulators, the courts, obviously, and your complaint process should gauge what action or what liability you as an organization could face as a result of this conflict. Two, there's a financial risk associated with it. As you increase the standard, there's a higher probability that you may lose advisors and or clients based on this process, which could have a direct impact on your book. And finally, it has a reputational cost. So how does BCS help you with this matter? Number one, as it relates to the dealer, it allows for timely decision making as the advisor can inform themselves of the requirements and complete the necessary forms at any point in time. Also, because of workflow processes, decision making should be quicker. Two, you can take a risk-based approach using the BCS Pro solution. Three, you have access to core information in a digital form around the individual. Four, collaborative, you're able to engage multidisciplinary teams in terms of the sign-off process. And finally, you have an accessible digital file, all the documents tied to this one event that is also searchable and can be ingested into the advisor risk scoring process. The following is a number of awards that we won, both nationally and internationally. Very happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. Rob, if you would join us, Rob Kerwin, the CEO of Vigilant CS.
Hi, Wendy, it's Rob.
Hello, Rob. We don't have any questions from the audience yet. Hopefully we will get some. In the meantime, though, again, same theme as with the others. You know, talking about flexibility of your products. You have a number of different modules by the looks of it. Are your clients able to pick and choose which modules they use?
Yes, absolutely, Wendy. The intention here is that we've got a smorgasbord approach to the situation in terms of there are core factors where we base the whole platform in terms of the registration module, but everything else can be picked and choose and integrated into their existing toolkit.
Awesome. Don't be shy, audience. You have an advisor risk scoring system. How do you determine that scoring for the advisors?
In my past life, when I was a CCO, I always found that obviously the capability to risk rank an individual advisor is a big asset in terms of taking a more of a targeted approach. And one of the things I determined is that we went out there and retained a PhD in organizational behavior and a former regulator to support us in terms of doing some research. There's actually a plentiful academic history in that department. Over 120 academic papers that we reviewed and determined that there's core factors around what we capture through the registration file process that is really the targeting and allowing you to take a risk-based approach. Having said that, one of the things that the beauty of the tool is that not only do we have our standard module or model, but we also allow the actual company to introduce other factors as well as other weightings to allow them to curtail it or use a more practical approach to the actual modeling as well.
Great. Okay. And does your system integrate with some of the filing systems, NRD, IROC services, those kinds of things?
We have some functionality in terms of integration, obviously, but one of the things that we continue to work with in terms of the regulators is really ensuring that to allow for an effective digitization of the regulatory file, the CSA has been open in terms of our discussion to see how we can allow for integration in terms of NRD. We're not there yet, but I think one of the biggest benefits, especially as we move forward, is that both regulators as well as the industry, I think, understand the need that to allow for RegTech to really succeed, there needs to be the ability to not only allow for the capturing and using digitization on one side, but the reconciliation of what the regulatory book in terms of the file is, as well as what's in the industry, because ultimately that will, A, improve the data quality for both entities, and number two, seeing that the regulatory file is such an important asset for the regulators, it's just as important for the industry to have that visibility in terms of what that core information is, to take, again, a risk-based approach to be able to support the best interest standard in terms of its higher legal standard of due care.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. We do have one question from the audience. It's a generic question, not necessarily about vigilance products.
Sure.
It says, will the presentations be made available, including contact details of the various presenters? And maybe this is someone who joined us a little later. Yes, I should have mentioned, first of all, that a recording of this webinar will be available on our website, and we'll be sure to send an email out with a link to that to all of our participants today. And yes, we are happy to provide you with contact details if you need them. Happy to connect you with any of the folks that are presenting today. Please just reach out to us and we'll do that. All right, thank you very much, Rob.
No problem, thank you.
We will now move on then to our final video, which is from Amazon Web Services.
Hi, I'm Gaurav, Enterprise Solutions Architect at Amazon Internet Services Private Limited, working out of Mumbai. Welcome to AWS Innovate Online Conference, ML and AI Edition. On the field, I work with a lot of enterprises and financial institutions. Our customers typically ask what AWS could do to help to solve their business problems that take a lot of time and effort. Take the case of the process of KYC, or Know Your Customers. KYC requires you to store government-approved documents for customers. This is required for every financial service company, at least in India. Customers need KYC documents for opening new bank accounts or having new insurance policies, mobile connections, mutual funds. Customers' document identification is a manually intensive process. So here's what it would typically happen, right? First, an employee would scan the document or documents. Then the soft copy of the document is opened on the employee's desktop. Further, she logs into the application which requires a document and attaches the image. That's not enough either. She then has to type in the same details in the system as well. Now this is prone to errors, and so there's also a maker-checker system associated with it. You'll have experienced this yourself, that it is a time-consuming process and generally takes more than 10 minutes at the kiosk. These organizations come and ask if we can help them in any way to bring down the time and make the whole process secure and cost efficient. Think about it from the security perspective. The documents has customers' information that is handled by multiple people and resides on the desktop and the scanner's disk as well. This is a potential risk There's no guarantee that the person who scanned the document did not store it in multiple locations. That also brings us to the question of durability of the document and its cost of storage when it is uploaded. Parallelly, we need to address the availability of the systems because multiple branches would need it during the working hours. New business is something that you would always need with a high availability SLA. From AWS side, there are a lot of building blocks that can help. Amazon Recognition can detect text-based labels in the document. Amazon S3 can securely and cost-effectively store documents which are encrypted at rest. Amazon DynamoDB for storing document-identified data. Amazon Poly, obviously, for communicating upload status using voice. We could also create a web app for manual edits. Amazon S3 plus Amazon API Gateway and AWS Lambda is always a good combination for a web application. So the architecture looks like this. Here, I've created a prototype that is using a Raspberry Pi. This is a $35 ARM-based computer on a board. For I/O, it has got USB ports, HDMI port, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. It packs sufficient amount of RAM and CPU to run workloads like this. Then, to detect the employees using their batches, I've attached an RFID reader. The process begins when the employee scans his or her badge. Document scan is done using a webcam that clicks an image of the document that is kept under it. The document is then uploaded to Amazon S3 with a unique identifier. The bucket is encrypted at rest and not publicly available. Subsequently, application invokes Amazon Recognition to detect the labels on the document. The bespoke code detects the type of document being identified and then knows where to pick the appropriate details from the document itself. These details are then saved into Amazon DynamoDB table. Finally, we use Amazon Poly to convey the details of the scanned document over your Raspberry Pi speaker. You'll notice that the process does not involve the keyboard at all. I have also created a serverless web application that can be used to view and update the document. It consists of a static website created using Vue.js and AWS Amplify. The application uses a framework called a Chalice in Python. It exposes API using Amazon API Gateway, and the code's deployed as Lambda functions. So in practically 2 days, I was able to create a prototype that provides smart and automated document identification. The business benefits are obvious. We've now got a cost-efficient, secure, scalable application that reduces the amount of effort and time for employees at branch offices. This means that we've created a system that is keyboardless for the employees, serverless for the backend, and painless for business. But enough said. Let's have a look at this in real life and in action. So what we have here is an acrylic case which houses a Raspberry Pi 3. Along with it, what I've attached to it is an RFID reader. There's a webcam, standard issuance brought off the net. What I've done, however, is I've slightly modified. I've pulled the lens slightly away from the sensor. What that means is it's now able to focus on documents which are 10 centimeters away, unlike a typical focus length of 1.5 foot. What I've also done is connect a speaker over Bluetooth. So that's the whole setup really. You don't need a keyboard or a mouse for this because the input devices and the output devices are all here. You typically go to this document if you're working in the branches. So what I have right now is a document called a SPAN, a sample one of that, which is issued by the Income Tax Department of India. An employee would go with the document that he needs to scan, just place it under the camera, then takes his or her own badge, swipes it in so that the individual is recognized. Then these details are captured by the camera, uploaded onto S3. Then recognition is called to detect the labels, the text on the entire document. Once that is done, these details are bespoke.
Document PAN for Rahul Gupta successfully uploaded by Gaurav.
As you just heard, these details were then captured. A bespoke piece of code then identifies the type of document that you've got. Once that document's identified, the relevant details are extracted from it. All these details then go into a DynamoDB table. These details, once received by a Raspberry Pi, it invokes Poly. Poly is the output device which gives you the MP3 which is played over the speaker. Let's do it once more, this time with a card called as Aadhaar card, which is issued by the government of India. It's a unique identifier for every individual. You want to place it under the camera. I'm going to take another RFID card for another employee, scan it in, and the process starts all over again. The frame's captured. Once the frame's captured, the details are uploaded onto S3, goes to recognition, detects labels, identifies.
R for Sakripa is successfully uploaded by Amit.
Probably, and the whole process is repeated itself. As you've seen, this process takes lesser time than it would have typically taken for the entire activity to be carried out manually. Let's see how it looks on the console. What have we captured on the back end? I'm going to the S3 bucket. Let's see all the documents captured here. Both the documents are captured here. Let's have a look at one of these. I will open that. There you have the image of the Aadhaar card, a sample one at that. On the DynamoDB side of things, you will see that there are two entries here, one of Aadhaar, one of the PAN card. The customer, the individual to whom the document belongs to, is identified. The doc type is identified as either a PAN card or an Aadhaar. The location in S3 where the document is uploaded, and the uploader's name. The employee who scanned that document is completely available. On the side of the web client, what I've got here is these details, which are auto-populated. This is a framework created using an entire serverless stack. The serverless stack consists of Vue.js as well as AWS Amplify to create the entire application. On the backend side, I've used a framework called a Chalice, which uses Python. So it has API gateway and AWS Lambda at the backend doing the computational part, and it fetches data from DynamoDB. You can then go and do a maker checker check or just have a look at what data was uploaded. So really that's the demo, and we need to see how the code was created. So let's have a look at the code that we have on the Raspberry Pi side of things. Here's the sample code that I've written in Python, and that runs in an infinite loop on the Pi. The function runDemoLoop runs continuously and waits for the employee badge and RFID card to be scanned. The function capturePicture captures the image using the webcam. This uses the operating system's native features. UploadPicture uploads the image named with a unique identifier to Amazon S3 bucket. ReadText as a function passes the uploaded document's location to Amazon Recognition's Detect Labels API. The method decipherDoc is a piece of bespoke code I've written to identify the document. And further, the code goes and picks up the relevant details from the text returned by Recognition. I've currently just picked up the person's name. Write to table, data of the employee who's uploading, the document type and its captured details along with its location in Amazon S3 is now stored in DynamoDB table through this function. Finally, play confirm, place a voice confirmation of the data using Amazon Poly. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration and got a deeper understanding on building such engaging solutions. Thank you again for attending, and we really appreciate your feedback so that we can better understand the topics and services that you would like to know more about. So please do take time to fill out our survey and let us know what you think. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Great, thank you, Amazon Web Services. I think we have Alvin Wang, who's responsible for business development and capital markets with us for Q&A. Hi, Alvin. Thanks for joining us. So far, no questions, but I will say I love the name of your product, Raspberry Pi. That's it's quite interesting. And it's a really unique and innovative solution, I think, for those hard copy government documents. I guess I would ask a couple of questions. How might a system like yours here integrate with other systems that your clients, dealers, for example, might be using?
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. So the difference here, right, is we're just providing kind of the tools and capabilities for customers to effectively build out the solutions for the client-focused reforms, right? And you've seen a number of different end solutions here today that are fantastic. And I think where our product fits in is really if they want to build any kind of enhancements on top of it, right? So if you take one of the questions earlier about, hey, are you going to incorporate machine learning or AI into some of the analytics, right? the customers have that ability to, right? So in Gaurav's presentation, he chose kind of a very narrow use case, which was just customer onboarding, right? And looking at kind of the extracting the details off of a government ID. Mm-hmm. If you think about the end-to-end for KYC, you want to do continuous monitoring of KYC, right? And keep that constantly updated. You can also use things, some of the AI services like voice transcription, right? So if you have a phone call that's recorded, you transcribe that call into text, and then be able to pull out some of the details, right? The customer might have said, hey, I got a new job, or I'm buying a house, or I have a kid going off to college, right? And you pull those details out. That can be another component. So it's really, about kind of piecing together the different components that the customer needs.
Right. We do have a question. Not sure if I've got this right, but will AWS partner with IROC members to pilot your solution?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're happy to pilot with anyone, right? I mean, all of these solutions are effectively just building blocks, right? So you kind of take the the OCR capabilities, right, of say recognition or text extract, and then put together all the different pieces to then build the end solution that you're looking for, to solve whether it's client-focused reforms or any other regulation.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. I don't think there are any more questions. Is there anything final that you want to add, Elvin? Please do.
Nothing from me. I mean, it's, thanks for having us here, Wendy. This is a fantastic event. And yeah, if you guys have any follow-up questions, you have my contact info. Feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Thanks. Okay, that then wraps up our inaugural virtual vendor showcase. We'd like to sincerely thank our sponsors, IROC and the MFDA, for this event. And thank you, the audience, for participating. We hope you found it helpful. As I said earlier, please reach out to us if you want to look at becoming a member, if you want contact information about these firms that presented today, or any other reason. So thank you and have a great day.